We have gotten together for another edition of the WTOP Huddle with Dave Preston, Rob Woodfork, Chris Cichon. Here we go. And well, last week, just after the huddle, it was announced what, quite frankly, I didn't expect necessarily would happen, that Wizards head coach Scott Brooks is not coming back with the team. And that's, first of all, what we do know is, as I talked with Scott after the decision was made, this was not a case where he was offered a contract and it wasn't suitable to his needs. It never reached that point. The Wizards and General Manager Tommy Shepard decided to go in a different direction. And that had to be a difficult decision because Tommy Shepard and Scott Brooks' relationship goes back at least 20 years. Tommy Shepard recognized the job and challenge that Scott Brooks had through this season and really throughout his entire 5-year tenure. As he said, this team was not the team initially that Scott Brooks signed up for. As we've talked about in the huddle, this was not a case of a coach who had coached the same team for 5 years and it had run into a cul-de-sac he could not get out of. It was really in the second year, if you want to say, of a rebuilding process. They did make the playoffs. I thought that might be enough to give Scott Brooks a chance to continue, given that Russell Westbrook has a guaranteed 2 more years left on his contract. Not to be. So the reality we're dealing with as we get together, Scott Brooks is not the coach. Now the Wizards have to come up with a coach. We'll begin with you, Rob Woodfork. Your thoughts on where the team goes from here?
Well, first of all, I think we have to frame this in a way that, people outside look at this. We cover the Washington Wizards and they're front of mind for us. But from a national standpoint, this is not a desirable job. CBS Sports actually did a ranking of the NBA openings. They had the Wizards pegged as last. So, some of these top-notch candidates may pass on it. There was, I read one article that was asking them to go all in on Jay Wright of Villanova. This is not a job that he would make the jump to the pros for. I think if you're the Wizards, you have to look to a couple of for me, the best choice would be Sam Cassell. He has ties to the area. He grew up in Baltimore. He started his coaching career here in Washington. His first 5 years as an assistant coach were spent here. I would love to see him finally get a long-awaited opportunity to be a head coach. And I think this would be the kind of situation that would be good for him in that, in that role. Becky Hammon is a nice option. I think that would be a landmark sort of deal. And certainly if you can get Dawn Staley out of South Carolina, that would also be a good one. The Wizards really need to look outside of the box for this hire because you've gone the retread route. You've gone the, unheralded college coach route. Now it's time to try something different. So, I know Cassell doesn't necessarily count in that category, but I would love to see them make him sort of the first option. And then if somehow that falls through, one of, either Becky Hammon or Dawn Staley, if you can pull that off, I think those would be really, really inspired choices.
All right. And again, it's interesting on CBS Sports, whether desirable location. The Atlanta Hawks just made their first Eastern Conference in 50 years. Was that a desirable location? At the end of the day, when Scott Brooks was hired, he was probably one of the hottest coaches out there because he had come off that incredible success with the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're coaching in the NBA, and this is where websites and everybody can talk about all they want to talk about. It's not where a coach is a magic pill that makes a difference, whether it's college or wherever it comes. Rick Pitino, there's a rumor he was a pretty good coach, but his famous quote, John Havlicek and whoever's not coming through that door, and he made the quote that he wouldn't have taken the Celtics job if he didn't know Tim Duncan was coming. Hello, it's an NBA draft.
No, and you absolutely have to have the right players, but
right, and
the Wizards only have.
League, and you have to have a coach that can develop the players and relate to the players. And ask coaches that have not worked out with the Lakers. Ask Phil Jackson how the Knicks worked out. It's not a name is for a press conference. And as you referenced, a college coach, a guy named Michael Jordan really believed in Leonard Hamilton. Leonard Hamilton found out he was in the fast lane he couldn't get out of when he jumped from the coaching to the NBA. Dave Preston.
I think there are a ton of assistants out there because it feels like every NBA team has at least 10 people on each staff. So there will be a lot of worthy candidates. Wes Unseld Jr. is a name that I've heard bandied about. He'd be an interesting option, at least in the interview process. Rob mentioned Becky Hammond. There are definitely, there's an opportunity for the Wizards to make a breakthrough, a revolutionary hire. They could very well do that. It's going to be a challenge to get the right person in any time in any job. You look at a guy like Nate McMillan, who was not a success in Indiana and was flushed out of there. Now he's a success with Atlanta. So you're beholden to the players that you've got. And I'm going to be curious as to see when they do make the hire, because Tommy Shepard has said that they might not make it before the start of free agency. It would behoove this organization to have their ducks in a row before the draft, before free agency, before all of the offseason issues are taken care of. Because I think if there's one thing that when you looked at Scott Brooks and Tommy Shepard, that combination, as so often happens, the general manager is working with a coach that he did not hire. That was the case with Ernie Grunfeld way back when he stepped in, who was a coach, and what have you. Eddie Jordan was a guy that he didn't hire, from what I recall. And that there's always a sense of awkwardness with that. It's important, I think, for the GM to be on the same page with the coach, to be on the same page with the guys that they bring in. Obviously, whoever coaches this team is going to have to be on the right page with Bradley Beal and with Russell Westbrook, at least for the next year or so.
And that would be Sam Cassell, and Dave Johnson was talking about being able to progress players, being able to get guys to perform at a higher level. That's Sam Cassell, because John Wall to this day still gives him credit for his progression into an all-star guard. So I think he would be a good fit with Bradley Beal. With Russell Westbrook, I guess it's to be determined, but for a guy who played guard and won championships as a player, I would think he'd be able to at least be able to get the most out of the guards, if not the entire roster.
No question. And he's paid his dues, and which is an important part of the equation. It's
Absolutely.
why I was such a champion for Patrick Ewing getting any job, and now ultimately the Georgetown job. The hire, in my view, of Ewing at Georgetown, yeah, that's great. He went to Georgetown. Bottom line, it is a tough job, and it's not as easy as having played it or having a name, type of situation. You make a good point, Dave, about when the coach and GM, it's good if it's simpatico. This was not a case where, Tommy Shepard was, while he was not the general manager, he was very much in sync with Scott Brooks. Eddie Jordan and Ernie Grunfeld, no, that was not a situation where things were in sync, and it was difficult. Cichon, using your wisdom, you've grown your beard more. You can really pontificate now. Your thoughts on this whole situation?
I totally agree with Rob on Sam Cassell. Think he would be the best option for this team, head coaching wise. I was perusing through the college ranks myself, and I saw Tony Bennett, and I thought, would he really ever leave Charlottesville to come to DC? Would Virginia fans be so upset coming to these Wizards games in the area? Could he live with that? I just don't ever see him leaving the likes of getting to beat up on teams like Georgia Tech to come to the NBA, where it's a lot more volatile job-wise. One name to keep, totally don't think this is going to happen, but Tommy Amaker from Falls Church, head coach at Harvard right now. This is a guy who has been a student of the game, and when you're coaching at a place like Harvard, you really are learning, different basketball systems, and you're working with smart people every day. I think that could really translate well here. So again, I don't know that he's even in any conversations with any NBA jobs, but Tommy Amaker, I think, would be somebody. Give him a call, Tommy Shepard, hook up, and the Tommy to Tommy connection. I'd like that in DC.
One thing I think about Tommy Amaker is that his wife, I believe, is on the Harvard faculty. And that's one of the reasons why he was not in the mix for the Duke job. I think when you look at, they mentioned, a college coach coming to the NBA. One of the reasons why it doesn't work for so many of these guys is that for those of us who remember watching Gary Williams perspire on the sidelines, and he was sweating over 5 or 6 losses in a calendar year. Even the good teams, unless you're the Lakers under, unless you're the Bulls under Phil Jackson or the 72 Lakers, you're going to lose more than 13 games. You lose 13, 15 games in a season at the college level, and you're Mark Turgeon, you've got ulcers, between now and the end of time. Tony Bennett, I don't feel him making the jump. Stranger things have happened. You put a big bag of money on somebody's doorstep, they'll do things that you never expected. I think for an NBA team, I don't think you should court a college coach because even though it's still basketball, they're playing a completely different game. And I think you need to be a little bit more measured when you're playing an 82 game regular season, best of 7, as opposed to a 30 game regular season, followed by 6 potential one and dones in the NCAA tournament. The Wiz would be wise to go after a hot assistant, maybe not necessarily a hot assistant, but an assistant who's paid their dues.
Yeah, no, and again, this is like in the case of Leonard Hamilton, as I mentioned them, this is not any disrespect to him because he obviously has continued with a tremendous coach.
He's been great in college, yeah.
But it has been a whole different adjustment, but it's a different deal. It's your program. You very much control the players, and that's not any negative against the NBA players. I'm just saying now suddenly you're running a different style of corporation, if you will, if you're a coach. So yeah, it's the same game, but it's not the same game, and that's
and it's also worth mentioning that the NBA is not the NFL. In the NFL, if you get yourself a really top-notch head coach, that can change the fortunes of the team immediately, even if you haven't had the entire roster overhaul. And I think Washington, the football team, is a great example of that, at least most recently. But in the NBA, I mean, there's maybe 2 or 3 head coaches that are real difference makers, if that. So, I mean, this hire isn't going to necessarily turn things around right away. They're going to have to really increase their, get the most out of the players they have, first and foremost, and have some of these ping pong balls fall in their favor. But they don't have any ping pong balls. They made the playoffs. That's kind of the downside of that late season push, is now they don't have an opportunity to land in that top 5 and maybe get one of these star players that can change your fortunes and get you to get your own big 3 and maybe make that push for a championship down the road.
Yeah, no, it's a unique, look, you can point to Brad Stevens. That worked out very well. And full credit to him. Nate McMillan, they didn't want him in Indiana, and he's doing okay in Atlanta. So, it definitely is a league where you can't do a broad brush with every situation is so unique and so special. And let's face it, I didn't see the Hawks getting this far, but then again, nobody predicted this Final Four, I don't think, for the although I passed a guard who told me he won $1,700. He was probably taking Chris Chion's bet suggestions because he picked all the teams to advance. So he's smarter than we all are. I'll echo the Sam Cassell because I dealt with him firsthand. Again, I love guys that pay dues because it's an important part of not only helping you as a coach in the NBA, but players know that and they feel that because that's what you're dealing with, in the NBA. That's another reason why I think Wes Unseld Jr. as you look at the success that Denver Nuggets have had, he's certainly been a part of that. He's been a part of player development. He's not just a name, even though he would be a name with this particular franchise. There's a personal connection here. I've watched him every step of the way from breaking down every inch of back when we used videotape with the franchise and it was called the Bullets. So his attention and passion for the game goes back. And by the way, he's a Johns Hopkins grad as well. So you're not fooling around. It'll be a challenging press conference. I'll have to make sure my pregame questions are correct because believe me, he knows subject and verb agreement. That's for sure. All right. Well, we'll see how this gets settled. But again, this had to be a tough decision for Tommy Shepard because I know we always say tough decisions sometimes and I think, nobody wants to fire anybody or welcome them back. But there's a long-term connection between these two and it had to hurt Tommy Shepard. And I know from talking to Scott Brooks, he wanted to be back with his team and it was a painful thing. So as much as on Twitter and everything else, we try to sort out people's lives, there's a human situation here and it's not an easy time. what's a better time as we transition to the Nationals? Dave Preston, since we've been sending you out to the ballpark, this team has been doing better. So I'm not buying into that Kyle Schwarber leadoff hitting business. They've been making a run with, as I said, they've been getting hot without Steven Strasburg and Max Scherzer bringing the heat. So this story really kind of crept up on us as this team, again, they're not in first place, but they're almost into July into their position.
Well, over 40% of the schedule has been played and they're still under 500. So there's still that, Dave. But you look at what this team just did. They had an 11-game homestand and you thought, okay, they need to win at least 7 or 8 games coming out of this homestand for you to feel good about where they're going. They won 8. They took 3 of 4 from the division leaders, which is huge because, they're not just, every game that they lose to the Mets from here on out, they're losing double ground if that's the case. So they wound up winning 3 of 4 against the Mets. They split with another division leader in San Francisco. And the move, you're right, the move Kyle Schwarber atop the lineup, putting together a lineup isn't necessarily, it's more of an art form than it is a craft. And you just don't know. Some combinations just work better and you don't know until you get them in the lineup for 2, 3, 4 days in a row. And even though Trey Turner has done the most damage in his career from the leadoff spot, he's very good in that 2 spot. And Kyle Schwarber does not look like a leadoff hitter. He's not a jackrabbit. He's not a high on-base percentage guy. I think growing up, we all looked at 2 guys as the ultimate leadoff hitters, Wade Boggs with the Red Sox and Ricky Henderson with the A's and other teams. And Kyle Schwarber is neither of those, but for whatever reason, he works from that leadoff spot and he has a little bit more pop. That's been good. They've also been getting great pitching from guys like Eric Fetty, Joe Ross for the most part, with the exception of Francisco Lindor, he's pitched well. And you can't, when you're a team that's built on pitching, you need your 3, 4, and 5 guys in that rotation to pitch well. John Lester notched his first win this past Saturday, so that's impressive. Max Scherzer comes off the injured list today, Tuesday, as we record this. He pitches against Philadelphia. He's potentially pitching Sunday against Miami. That's huge because they're right now in the middle of an 11-game stretch against division foes that won't end until next Monday when they meet the Mets. They play 2 against the Phillies, 4 against Miami, then 2 against Tampa Bay, and 4 against the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Rays and the Dodgers are both contenders as well. So as we get towards the end of June, early July, they just finished a huge 11-game stretch. Right now they have a 12-game stretch that they're about to begin that's equally as important. If they come out looking good on the other side, just like they did this last 11-game stretch, they'll be a contender. They very well could get flushed back down to the cellar if things don't go right, though.
World Series on the way. Gerardo Parra is back with the team. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
I went to the game Sunday as a fan, and it was about 140 degrees. It felt like in the shade at Nationals Park. Now, I forgot to do what a reporter should always do, check the phone before going, because the Nationals purchased a contract of Gerardo Parra. So when he got up to hit that pinch hit double in the 7th, I thought, I got to get to a cooling station. The heat has gotten to me. It's 2019 all over again. So I think we're in good shape. Gerardo Parra is back with the team, and I didn't have to go to the hospital. Rob?
No, and actually, I mean, look, the pitching was what carried them throughout this stretch. And actually, to further Dave's point, I believe there's another Mets game, makeup game that's in between that Tampa Bay series and the Miami series, if I'm not mistaken. So another opportunity to really gain some ground in the division. But this homestand was carried by pitching, which is odd because you didn't have Scherzer, you didn't have Strasburg, and of course, getting the sort of performances out of the, sort of second and third tier guys, the fill-in guys, as it were, getting those sorts of performances were so clutch because, as hot as Schwarber has been, the rest of the bats have not necessarily been as consistent. And the guy I'm looking at is Juan Soto. I said it before the season. This team is only a playoff team. This team is only a World Series contender if Juan Soto is sort of the engine of that offense. If he's hot, if he's got a hot bat and he's swagging out and flipping the bat and all that, then they have an opportunity to do something special. We haven't really seen him take off yet. And we all know that Schwarber, as hot as he is and as breathtaking as it is to watch him hit home runs at a historic rate, that's not going to be sustainable. There's going to come a time where that bat's going to cool off, and they need to have somebody who's going to be able to pick up that slack. And I'm looking directly at Juan Soto when I say that, because again, if he even hits his career averages in on-base percentage, hits, home runs, if he can even hit his career averages, that is a huge boost to this lineup. So I'm hoping that we start to see that sooner rather than later. And this road streak against division rivals, that would be the perfect time for it.
All right, Chris, your wisdom.
Great to see Patrick Corbin pitching well, 2 quality starts in a row. Absolutely huge, considering that they did lose Max Scherzer for a start. Now, as aforementioned, he's going tonight against Philadelphia Phillies Tuesday night. And I expect really Washington to keep the bats rolling. They finally are starting to drive in runs when Kyle Schwarber at the top of that lineup just is the spark plug and just gives everybody else confidence that we can hit this pitcher right out the gate. And so I just think that has been such a huge move. I mean, during that homestand, all of the home runs and multi-home run games. I mean, this was a team that was scoring 0-1 runs. So bullpen still has been pretty good. And, the Mets are a team that I watched. They lost 3 of 4 to the Nats. Does anybody sit here and say, wow, the Mets are so much better than the Nationals? I mean, outside of Jacob deGrom, and when he starts, that's automatic, but they don't really scare. You can strike Pete Alonso out. They have a lot of injuries to their lineup. So again, I feel like I say it every week. Divisions for the taking. Just got to keep kind of, to be cliche like Davey Martinez at times, got to keep grinding it out, be 1-0 the next day.
Well, and you make a great point. First of all, also the fact that Jacob deGrom, his start was pushed back until Monday against the Braves. We're probably in a different frame of mind if the Nationals had only split that series with the Mets, because as much as it was great the weekend, you also realize, okay, great, you're now made up 2 games in the standings in the pursuit against the Mets. But I'll throw out my name of in Davey Martinez. I trust and believe, and it's more than this 1-0 every day. I don't know if in all my years I've ever seen a manager stay a straight line through everything. This obviously includes what happened in 2019 when we were all ready to throw him out of town, it seemed, and he just kept the faith. And again, this has not been a smooth start to this season, but I never notice a change in his demeanor, win or lose. He seems to keep the belief in this team, and that doesn't mean that's the simple answer and you automatically go to the playoffs or the World Series. But I'll say this: that he definitely sets a tone that at least gives a team a chance to get through difficult times, and I think that's proving out right now.
Hey, before I tag up and head into the studio for the 3:15, 2 things. Yan Gomes has played really well, hit a couple home runs last week. The way he's gunning down guys from the plate, base runners, absolutely awesome. And 2, don't sleep on the Miami Marlins. Even though they're in last place of the NL East, they have the best run differential of any NL East team, plus 18. That's tied with the New York Mets. The Marlins, even though I don't think they're trying to win until 2027, they're still going to be a tough out this week as the Nats go down to South Beach.
We'll send that clip to Miami, see if they get some fans there with the Marlins. All right. As Dave has pointed out, he's got a sports desk to get to. It's our time to wrap things up. Chris, we'll start with you.
So
any subject.
I'm going with the NHL playoffs because that's been my moneymaker gambling wise. You just bet on Andrei Vasilevsky, and outside of the Saturday night game, which that stop by Ryan Pulock in the Islanders game to save that series for them, one of the best scenes I had ever seen in a hockey game. And then Tampa wins 8-0. And Sergachev, their defenseman, said it, that really nobody beats Tampa. Tampa really only beats themselves. They're going to have to play in front of a raucous Coliseum. I mean, if there's one venue that I've watched on television that kind of gives me goosebumps with the fans just going absolutely crazy, it's been Nassau Coliseum. I mean, those fans have shown up. That's a difficult building to play in, but I do think Tampa takes care of business there. Vegas Golden Knights, Montreal, we see tonight. I think Vegas also uses the home crowd, and they're ultimately the better team. So I think that Vegas and Tampa start to separate themselves and will meet in the Stanley Cup Finals.
But you didn't predict an 8-0 win for the Lightning. Don't tell me that.
No. I mean, I thought they were going to win kind of handedly, but no, that's the biggest loss in Islanders playoff history.
I checked 6 websites this morning just to confirm I was reading that score right. That was playoff hockey. That's nuts. Rob?
Absolutely. And if you guys aren't getting Cheese Pick of the Week in the Huddle newsletter, you're missing out, because this is the stuff that you get, man. I'm telling you, he's been money. I need to tally up your 1-loss record so I can at least boast that.
No, man, because then you start jinxing it and I'll go cold. The shoe always drops.
On a more serious note, though, man, I got to give it up for Carl Nassib of the Las Vegas Raiders. Making the announcement Monday that he is gay, and it's a monumental thing that he has done, because he's the first NFL player to be openly gay, first NFL player on an active roster. We all remember Michael Sam and respect his process of coming out during the draft process, but with Nassib as an active player to do that, hopefully this opens the door. And I know, don't get it twisted, there are other gay players in the NFL. They just haven't been out front about it. Hopefully this opens the door for some of them to be able to speak their truth, and then sort of inspire another generation of guys to be able to speak their truth and to feel confident in themselves enough to do that. The negative stereotypes don't belong in sports. We need more male athletes. The WNBA is a trailblazer in so many ways. This is among them. I would love to see the NFL have more players come out and really spark a revolution, so to speak, in that vein.
And I'll end with, I think it gives what's going on with swimming at the Olympics, and kids from our area is an example of that. Just believe in your dreams, and specifically Montgomery County. I don't know what's in the water out there, but a great story with Katie Ledecky going to Little Flower School in Bethesda, and Phoebe Bacon has Katie Ledecky as a mentor. And then all of a sudden she sees what Katie Ledecky does in 2012 and says, well, maybe swimming can take me somewhere. And now Phoebe Bacon, who just turned 18, that somewhere is the Tokyo Olympics. And she was inspired by Katie Ledecky, somebody that she looked up to, and now she's going to be in the same pool at Tokyo. So that's what in sports ultimately is all about. It gives us a belief that all things are possible. But you know what? All time is not possible. We've come to the end of the WTOP Huddle. We thank you for your time. For Dave Preston, I had a sportscast to get to, but forgot to turn off his camera. So I hope nobody does anything crazy there at the TOP Newsroom. Chris Cichon and Rob Woodfork. I'm Dave Johnson. Thanks for watching.
Break.
Oh man, I made it back for the finale. That's couldn't have timed it